Algebra 1, Thursday, test, Unit 8, 2 days before spring break, so don't miss it. Okay, going over the review for you so that you can do well. All right, let's do this. All right, simplify the polynomial. So number 1, we went over this in class, but I'll kind of quickly go over it again. Okay, so remember, we got plus right here. That means we are not going to change anything. We can just rewrite the whole thing just like this. Okay, just rewrite all the terms. And remember, here I've got a plus and then a minus. Which one wins? The negative does. So we got minus x squared minus 3x minus 14. Okay, now I'm going to choose some new colors because I'm going to make some shapes so I know which ones can combine with one another. Okay, I start with the first term, which happens to be x squared, so look for another x squared. I have one here. And because there's no number there, I'm just going to go ahead and write 1 because it'll make us easier to know, or make it easier for us to figure out what we need to subtract. Here I'm going to put a circle because we ran out of x squareds. And then I also have another x term here. And then do a new one, triangle here, triangle here. Okay, so now just combine the ones that have the same shape or the same term or same x exponent. Okay, so now we have negative 7 x squared minus 1 x squared. Well, negative 7 minus 1 is negative 8. And if you don't believe me, check it on the calculator. A lot of you guys made that mistake in class. You said negative 7 minus 1 is 6, but it's not. Okay, 2 negatives make a bigger negative. All right, cross those out. We're done with them. Then 9x minus 3, that's 6x. And then negative 2 minus 14, negative 16. And then that's it. You don't have to do anything else after that. You don't have to factor it. You don't have to do Xbox. You just leave it like that. Simplified. Simplified, you leave it in this form. If you were to do Xbox, that means you're going backwards. All right? We don't want to go backwards. We want to keep moving forward. That's life. Okay, so this next one, again, look for the signs in between the parentheses. Here I have a minus. Here I have a plus. The plus isn't going to do anything, so the 9 and the x will stay the same. But this minus here will change the sign to the right. So it'll change everything here. Okay? Let's do a different color there so we don't confuse that. This plus will not change the 9x, the 9 and the negative x. Okay. So now we just rewrite 2x and minus 5 because that doesn't change. But now the x becomes negative and the 2 becomes negative. So now we have minus x and minus 2 plus 9 minus x. Again, we're going to make our shapes. Box here, and a box here. Those are all x terms. And then the next one I'll do a circle here, and circle here. Okay, so now, again, I'm going to put a 1 here just so we know exactly what number that is and what we're subtracting. So here I'm going to do 2 minus 1, which is 1, minus another 1, which is 0. So guess what? Those equal 0, those cancel out. There's nothing left. So let's move on to the numbers. Negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. And then we have plus 9. So I'm going to do this one step at a time. And then negative 7 plus 9, well, that is equal to 2. And that's it. Yes, we can end up with just one little incy-wincy, teeny little number. That's okay. It's not anything bad with that. All right? Okay, number 3. Look what we have here. Parentheses are touching. You know what that means. We're going to multiply, and we're going to use a box. Okay? So first, we need to start with our x, though. No, I apologize. Nope. Make our box. 2b2, like Ollie says. All right, put our terms on the outside. And then we have x times x. Remember, we're going to multiply in each of these boxes. X times x will be x squared, because remember it's x and x to the 1 and x to the 1, and when we multiply, we add the exponents. And we have negative 8 times x. That's negative 8x. And then x times 7, 7x. And then negative 8 times 7, negative 56. Okay, and then for our final answer, make sure we finish the race. X squared, and then we add the like terms, which are right there, negative 8x and 7, which will combine to make negative 1x, and then minus 56. And as you guys know, we don't like ones if we don't need them. Okay, so that will be our answer. All right, number 4. Okay, remember, if you see this little teeny eeny weeny 2 here, what do we call that? Squared. If it's squared, that means that we have 2 of these binomials. Okay, so we'll have one 5x minus 1 and another 5x minus 1. And then look, 2 by 2 again. Okay, so 5x here, minus 1 here, 5x here, minus 1 here again. And then you're like, oh, it's 10x squared, right? No, it's 25 because we multiply. 5 times 5, and then x to the 1 times x to the 1. Well, that's 1 and 1 make 2. Okay, so now negative 1 times 5x, that's negative 5x. And then again, the same thing, 5x times negative 1, negative 5x again. And then the last term, negative 1 times negative 1, that's positive 1. Okay, so now write the first term, 25x squared. Done with that. Now add the 2 that are the same. Negative 5 and negative 5 make negative 10, not 0, 10, and then 1 plus 1. And you're done. Okay, number 5. Now remember, we need to recognize what kind of box we need here. We can't just throw a 2 by 2 out for all of these. Okay, it doesn't work that way. You need to see how many terms are in each part of your expression. Okay, so the first part we have 1 in the front, and then we have 1, 2, 3. So that is a 1 by 3 box. Okay, so now the first term goes in the outside left. Then we put the rest of the terms on the top. 4x cubed, negative 5x to the 4th, and 2. And again, you are going to multiply. So negative 24, because it's negative 6 times 4. And then you have x to the 5th times x cubed. Remember, we add the exponents, so that's x to the 8th. And then we'll have negative 6 times negative 5. Well, that equals positive 30. And the x to the 5th times x to the 4th. And we add the exponents, so we have 9. And then negative 6 times 2 is 12. And then we have no x's to multiply, so we just still have x to the 5th. But you're still not done. Finish the race. Okay. Remember, the first one to go, because remember, we need to put in standard form, is the one with the highest exponent. So 30 x to the 9th has the highest, so that will go first. Done. Then negative 24 x to the 8th has the next highest exponent, so that will go second, or segundo. And then last but not least will be plus 12x to the 5th. And there you go. And don't think to factor, because if you factor that, you're going backwards. We just want to go forwards. Okay? That's why it's called reverse box, because we're going the reverse of multiplying. Okay, so now here you have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So that means if it's 1, 2, and 3, it's a 2 by trace. 3. All right, so now, since we know it's a 2 by 3, put that x there, 5 here, and then you put the rest of the terms on the top in the other parentheses. Okay, now, again, start with the first box. X, this is x to the 1, times x to the second, and we add the exponents, so x to the third. And remember, this is just a 1 here in front of that x, so it's 1 times 4. And then there's also a 1 here to help us reference. So 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. And then x to the 1 times x to the 1, because remember that's just a 1 there, so that's x squared, because we add the exponents. And then here, 4 times 5, that's 20. 5 has no x, so now it's just x squared. Then 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. And don't forget the x. And then 1 x times 10, that's 10x. And then 5 times 10 is the last one, 50. Okay, so now let's write out our answer. And let's first start with the highest exponent. And that's the only one that has x to the 3. So that goes first. Done. Okay, now remember, the nice thing about these boxes is that the ones that are the same will be diagonal. Okay, so now we have 20x squared minus 1x squared, or 20 minus 1, so that's 19. X squared. Done, done. Okay, now negative 5 plus 10, well that's positive 5, and it was just 1x. And then we're done, done. And then the last one, 50. Yay, 50. And look at that big, gorgeous expression. Doesn't it just put a smile on your face? Ah. Okay, back to work. Okay, so now number 7. Classifying the polynomial. Okay, the first thing we need to do is put it in standard form. Highest exponent goes first. Highest exponent first. Okay, so the highest exponent is 6. Why is it not working? Sorry guys, technical difficulties. So 6 is our highest exponent. Then we'll have 3, then we'll have 2, and it has to go in that order. Okay, so we'll start with x to the, we don't want highlighter yellow, we want black. We want x to the 6 first, done. And then we'll want the next highest exponent, which is x to the third, so 7x cubed will go next, done. And then negative 11x squared is our last one. Okay, so just remember, it's important that these exponents go in order from highest to lowest. So it doesn't matter what number is in front of the x, it matters what the exponent is for standard form. Okay? Okay, now the leading coefficient is the first number. Well, the first number here is 1. We just can't see it, but I wrote it there for you. So it's 1. The degree is the highest exponent. It's this here, 6. It's always the highest exponent. And now the terms, it's either going to be monomial, which is 1 term, or binomial, which is, binomial, which is 2 terms, or it's going to be trinomial, which is 3 terms. Okay? Anything more than that, 4 or more, is a polynomial. Okay? So in this case, we have 1, 2, and 3 terms. So 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And then we would say 3, and it's a trinomial. Okay? All right. Next page. Flip the page. Oh, a little too far. Okay, so now number 8. Okay, we need to factor this polynomial. So again, remember we need to start with Let's see if I can find the same color. Okay, we need to start with the numbers. And remember, this is not x squared. If this is x squared, we use this x box. But there's no x squared or no letter squared, then we're doing GCF. Okay. So now 16 and 20. Highest number we can divide into both of those. Well, that would be 4. Okay. And then how many x's are the same? Well, none, because 20 doesn't even have an x. Okay, so that is it for the GCF. Now we have to write in the rest of the factors. Okay, so now we have to say to ourselves, what do I multiply times 4 to get 16? 4. And then to get 16x, I also need to multiply x. And then plus. And then 4 times what equals 20? Well, that's 5. Boom, done. Your answer. Okay. Now the next one. A couple different ways you can do this. But let's do the tried and true, the way that I've always taught you. That is the x box. So x first. Now remember, there's a 1 here, so it's 1 for the first times the last, so 1 times 25. And then the bottom number is the middle number, so negative 10. And then we have to figure out what two numbers multiply to 25, but also add up to negative 10. Well, the most obvious, and I'm sure a lot of you guys already see it, is 5 and 5. But now let's think about it. 5 times 5 equals 25. But does 5 plus 5 equal negative 10? No, because they're both positive. Okay, so let's make one negative. Okay, so if I do one negative, the other positive, well, that means if I multiply them, then it's going to be negative 25. But 25 is positive, so that doesn't work either. So my only other option is then to make them both negative. And I know if I do a negative times a negative, well, that gives me a positive 25. Well, that works. And then a negative plus a negative gives me a bigger negative. So that works. All right. So now I'll make my box. And I'm going to put the first term here, which is x squared. Okay, that's this number. And then I put the last term here. Look in your notes. Follow along in your notes if you don't remember this. I'm going to pull this up right now. Please, while you're doing the studying for this test, take out these notes. These are valuable. They're going to help you get through a lot of these and figure out what is the next step. What's my first step? Okay, so for instance, what we're doing now is this here. We went over this one day. Look over those notes. See what we did. Okay? First term, last term, put it in the box, find the factors. Okay? Okay, so now, again, we take these 5s, and they go inside here. Negative 5. And we want to add an x to each one of them. We're going to put an x next to each one, okay? Now, for x squared, what do I have to multiply to get x squared? Well, that'd be x times x equals x squared. Okay, so that means an x goes here and an x goes here. Now, x times what equals negative 5x? Well, that'd be negative 5. And then the same thing here, x times what equals negative 5x? Negative 5. And then there's our two factors. So now we write this out as x minus 5 and x minus 5. Done. Okay. Now let's go over to 10. Now, again, oh, I apologize. I didn't show you the other way. Okay, so now the other way of doing this is if you recognized, if you look in special cases in your notes, which was right here from a couple days ago, if you take the square root of the first term and the square root of this last term, and you multiply those two times 2, if they equal the middle number, then you can use this method here. Okay? So again, here I have square root of 1x squared. Well, that's 1x. and the square root of the last number, which is 16, and that is 4. 4 times 1x is 4x, times 2 is 8x. So then what I can do is just take the square root of the first one, which we just found, 1x, and that becomes the first letter, and then take the square root of the last one, and that becomes the last number. Okay, and then it's minus minus because this is minus. Okay, so now I have x squared minus 10x plus 25, and what I do is I take the square root of this, and I get x here times 5 here, because that's the square root of this and square root of that, and I multiply that times 2, and if x times 5 is 5x times 2 is 10x. That does equal the middle number. So then what I can do is take the square root of the first, which is x, that becomes x here, and the square root of the second, that becomes 5 here. And in this case, we have a minus here, so if it's minus, that means I'll have minus and minus here. Same answer. Okay. Now on this next one, we have b squared minus 49. Okay, if we did x box, remember there's a missing term, so it'd be 0, and then we could still do our box and our x, so now negative 49, because it's 1 times the last term, and then 0 on the bottom. And then we'd have to figure out two numbers that multiply to a negative 49. Well, the obvious one would be 7 and 7. And if I make them both positive, well, that won't equal a negative 49, so one has to be negative. And then I know, well, let's make the other one negative just so you can see it. And then 7 minus 7 does equal 0, so that works there. Okay, so now, first term here, last term here, 7x here, negative 7x here, and then what times what equals b squared? Well, that's b times b. Oh, sorry, that's supposed to be b here and here. Then b times what equals 7b? Well, that's 7. And then b times what equals negative 7b? Negative 7. Okay, so b minus 7 and b plus 7. Okay. Now, nice thing about when you have two terms with a minus in the middle, like this, we can right away see that the first term is going to be the square root of this one, here and here, and then the second term will be square root of this one, here and here. And then the sign, when it's the minus in the middle, is just plus minus. Okay, same answer. Okay, number 11. Okay, so now remember, in order to use the Xbox, our little Xbox method, we have to have an x squared in our exponents. But here we don't have x squared. We only have x to the fourth, x to the third, and x. So our only other option is just to do a GCF. Okay, so first look at the numbers. 48, 24, 6, biggest number we can divide. Well, the biggest number we can divide there would be 6. Okay, then we need to look at the x's. And what's the biggest number we can divide into the x's? I'm sorry, not the biggest number. How many x's are the same? X to the 3, x to the x. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 here, 1, 2, 3 here, and we have 1 here. So start with the smallest number of x's, 1, 1, 1. Well, they only all share 1, okay, because there's no more here to circle. Okay, so now we write what's left. So now 6 times what equals 48? 8. X to the 1 times what equals x to the 4th? Well, we need 3 more x's to get x to the 4th. Then minus, then 6 times what equals 24? 4. then x to the 1 times x to the 3, times what equals x to the 3? X squared, because we need 1, 2 equals 3. Okay, now the last one, 6 times what? 6 times what equals 6? 1. And then x to the 1 times what equals x to the 1? Well, it's just still 1. So then that's it. Okay, there's your answer. Number 12. Okay, number 12. All right, so now we've got x squared. So if we have x squared, what can we do? Do we do GCF? GCF? Or Xbox? Which one? Well, if it's x squared, that means we're going to do Xbox. Okay, so make our x. 1 times 12, 12. 8 on the bottom. And then find the two numbers. Let's see. What multiplies to 12? 4 and 3, 6 and 2, 1 and 12. 4 and 3 can't add to 8, but 6 and 2 will. So 6 and 2. Now let's make sure it's correct. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 plus 2 is 8. So yes, that will work. Yes. Okay, so now make your box. And remember the first box, x squared. Last box, 12. And then you'll put 6x here, 2x here. And remember, those numbers came from here and here. Okay. So now, again, x, what times what equals x squared? X, x. X times what equals 2x? 2. X times 2 equals 2x. X times what equals 6? 6x. 6. X times 6 equals 6x. And there is our factors. X plus 6. And x plus dose, or 2. Okay. Boom. Done. Love the Xbox, don't you? All right, number 13. Your teacher's so clean. Not at all mean. All right, so now we got a 1 here. So let's see. Let's make our x. Because look, GCF or Xbox? Squared, Xbox. I already gave it away because I started the problem anyways. Okay, so now 2 first times the last, -3. 2 times -3, -6. Then at the bottom, -1. Okay. Well, two numbers that multiply to -6, but add to -1. Okay, let's go over here on the side. Let's see. 6 and 1 multiplies 6. 3 and 2. I don't think I can add to 1 or -1 with 6 and 1, but I probably could do it with 3 and 2. Okay, so which one's going to have to be negative, though? That's the question. Okay, so if I make 2 negative, well, 3 times -2 is -6. And 3 minus 2, is that -1? No, it's +1. So it can't be, So it can't be positive. Oops, sorry. So it looks like we're going to need to make the 3 negative. -3 plus 2 does equal -1. There we go. So, make our box. Then we put our first term here, 2n squared. Last term here, and then negative 3 here, n, and then 2n here. Now, what do we have to multiply to get 2n squared? Well, I know n times n is n squared, but to get 2n, I'll have to multiply 2 as well. Okay, so then that means I'm going to have to put a 2n either here or here. So let's start here. And I'll put the n here. Okay, so now n times what equals 2n? Well, that's 2. And then 2n times what equals negative 3n? Well, there is no number I can multiply unless I do a fraction. So if it doesn't work, then that means I put the 2n in the wrong place. I put the 2n here. And start over. Okay, then you just switch it. Now 2n times what equals 2n? Well, that would be 1. And then n times what equals negative 3n? Negative 3. And then there's my terms, or my factors. I have n plus 1, and then 2n minus 3. Done. Okay? Now number 14. Come on down. Okay, so now, sorry. It should be number 14, but for some reason it says 12. All right. Oh yeah, you guys told me that earlier in class. Okay, so now let's look at this one. So I'm recognizing I've got a 4 and a 1 here, and those are perfect squares. So let me see if I can do the quick way real quick. Well, I take the square root of the first, and square root of the last. Square root of the first is 2m, because square root of 4 is 2. And square root of m squared is m. And then I take the square root of the last, which is 1. And if I multiply that times 2, if that equals this 4, then I can do the quick way. Well, 2m times 1 is just 2m. And then 2m times 2, well, that is 4m. So yes, I could do the quick way here. So let's do that, and then I'll show you the long way. Okay, so first, you do the square root of the first term, which is 2m, and that's the first one. And the square root of the last, the 1. And then the sign is going to be whatever this sign is, which is minus and minus. Okay? So there's our answer. Now, the next one, same thing. Let's do it with the box. So first term, take away the square root so we can see what we're doing. First term times the last term, so 4 times 1 is 4, and the negative 4 on the bottom. Then find the two numbers that multiply to those. Multiply to 4 and add to negative 4. Well, I know it's probably going to be 2 and 2. If I do positive 2's, that'll multiply to this, but the negative, it won't equal negative 4 because they're both positive. So if I make one negative, well, negative 2 times 2, that doesn't equal positive 4. So that means they both need to be negative. Okay, so now, make our box. Remember, first term goes here, and then the last term goes here. And so then we'll have negative 2m and negative 2m. And then I have to say, okay, well, for 4m squared, what do I have to multiply to get 4m squared? Well, I know m times m equals m squared, but I need 4m squared. Okay, well, I know that 2 times 2 equals 4, so let's do 2m and 2m. So 2m, 2m, and then 2m times what equals negative 2m? That would be negative 1. And then 2m times what equals negative 1? I'm sorry, equals negative 2, it would be negative 1. Same thing. Okay, so now take your first factors And that's your first binomial. And then the second one, 2m minus 1. And there's your answer. Look, same thing. Okay, I could do it the quick way, or I could still use my tried and trusted box. Okay, so let's go into number 15. Okay, so again, here's a problem where I have two terms and a minus in the middle. Okay, so if that's the case, I can take square root here, square root here. Square root of 25 is 5, and a p squared is p. Okay, and then square root of 4 is 2. And then I can just make my binomials, and it's 5p, 2, 5p, 2. Remember, the 5p always goes first, or the first term goes first, and then the second one goes second. And then when it's the two terms with a minus, it's plus minus. Okay, now let's do it with the long way. Okay, so remember, if we're going to do it with the x box, we need three terms. 25p squared plus 0x minus 4. Make our x. Then it will be negative 4 times 25. That would be 100. And then 0 here. And two numbers that multiply to 100. Well, there's lots of choices. Let's see, there's 25 and 4. We just did that. There's 20 and 5, 10 and 10. Oh yeah, 10 and 10. 10 and 10 can make 0 if one of them is negative. Okay, so negative 10 times negative 10 equals negative 100. Negative 10 plus 10 equals 0. Okay, so now 25p squared goes here, negative 4 here, and then negative 10p and 10p here. And then I know to get 25p squared, well, that'll have to be 5 times 5p times 5p. So then that means that here and here. Okay, now 5p times what equals negative 10p? That would be negative 2. Then 5p times what equals 10? That would be just 2. Okay, so then our first binomial comes from here, 5p minus 2, and the second binomial is 5p plus 2. And again, they're both the same, as they should be. Okay, number 16. Okay, number 16, now if you notice, we don't have a square here as the first one. We have a square here, but the problem is that we don't have a square or a 2 as the first exponent. And we also have 3 c's. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so look at the difference between that one and then let's say this one here. Here it starts with a square. Also here it starts with a square. But here we start with a cubed. If that's the case, what we have to do is do GCF first. Okay, so now let's find the GCF. Let's pick a better color. GCF for 20, 22, and 12. Okay, so I have to find the biggest number I can divide into 20, 22, and 12. If I do 4 will work here, and for 12, but not for 22. If I do 11, no, I can't do 11. 10, no. 5, no, it only works here. So the biggest number I can do is 2. And now how many c's are the same? Okay, well the highest number of c's we have is that 1c here, because we have c here, 2 c's here, and 1, 2, 3 c's here. So we circle 1, 1, 1. So we have 1 in common, so we just have 1 c there. Okay, another way to see this is if I have 20, 22, and 12. If I do my factor tree, well, this is 5 times 4, and then 4 is 2 times 2, and then this is 11 times 2, and then this is 4 times 3, and then 4 we can break that out into 2 times 2. Okay, now circle what you see is the same. Well, I have 1, 2 here, 1, 2 here, and another 2 here. Now, do I have anything else that is in common? A 5? No, no one else has a 5. A 2? There's a 2 here, but then the middle one does not have another 2. And then the 11? Nobody shares 11 or 3. So it's just 1, 2 that's in common. Okay. So now I can do this two ways. I can say what times 2 equals 20. Well, that'd be 10. Or I can do 20 divided by 2 is 10. And again, here we have 1c. Here we have 3. So in order to get 3 c's, I need to multiply this c times 2 c's, or c squared. Or another way to see that is 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay? And then here, 22 divided by 2, it's 11. Then 2 minus 1, well, that's just 1c, minus, and then 2 times 6 equals 12. And then we have 1c here. And then 1 minus 1, well, that's 0, so there's no c's there. Okay? Now we need to recognize the fact that here we can actually factor that itself. Okay, so let's start factoring by drawing our x. I'm going to do it over here on the right. And the reason I'm going to do it over here on the right is because we don't want to forget about our 2c here. Okay, that still needs to remain in our answer in the end. So I'm going to write it here, and then I know that I'm going to end up with 2 binomials here. We just got to fill them in. Okay, so now, remember, we're only factoring just the part that in the yellow. Only the part inside the parentheses, not the 2c. Okay, so that means first term is going to be 10. Last term is negative 6. So 10 times negative 6, negative 60. And then the middle term is 11. So now I got to come up with some numbers that multiply to negative 60. Okay, well, I know 20 and 3. What else? 10 and 6. 12 and 5. And actually, let me show you a way to figure that out. Start with 2. Do 60 divided by 2. Well, that's 30. Then do 3. 60 divided by 3, 20. Then do 4. 60 divided by 4, that's 15. Then do 5. 60 divided by 5 is 12. And then stop there and see if you can make 11 with these numbers. Okay, well, 2 and 30 are too far apart. That's never going to add to 11. So is 3 and 20. That's too far apart. That's not going to add to 11. But these look like they're close enough. So how about 15 and 4? Let's set that up first. Okay, can I make 11? Well, 15 plus 4 does not equal 11, so that means one of them has to be negative. Alright, so let's try 15. Well, negative 15 times 4 equals negative 60. Negative 15 plus 4 equals negative 11, so it's not 15. So let's try negative 4. Okay, so 15 minus 4 does equal 11, so there's our numbers. Okay, so now, there's our box. And now remember, we're only focusing on the part that's in yellow. So 10c squared there, last term there, 6. And now 15c here, and negative 4c here. Okay, so I know that to get 10c squared, it's going to have to be 5c times 2c. So let's see, I'm going to put the 5c here, and the 2c here. And I know that 5c goes here, because I know that I can multiply a number times some number to get 15. Okay, I can't multiply 2 times some number to get 15. Okay, so 2 times negative 2 equals negative 4, and then 5c times 3 equals 15c. Okay, so now there's our factors, and 2c minus 3 goes here, and then 5c minus 2 goes here. There it is. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oops, sorry, I go over here to the left. See if I can get that by itself. Okay, so now we have 3x to the 3 minus 9x squared minus 330x. Well, if you notice, we have x, x, and another x. So we can't do the box. Also, this is x to the 3. So we can't do the box with that, or the x box. So then we have to do GCF. Okay, so first look at the numbers, 3, 9, 30. Biggest number we can divide, 3. Okay, now with the x's, which ones are the same? Okay, well we have 1x is the same. Okay, so we have 3x. Then I have to figure out the rest and replace the rest of the factors. So now 3x times what equals 3x to the cubed? Well, 3 times 1 equals 3. And then x times what equals x to the 3, x squared, or 3 minus 1 is 2. Then minus 3 times what equals 9, 3. x1, x to the 1 times what equals x squared, the x to the 1, or again 2 minus 1 is 1. Then minus, and then 3 times what equals 30, 10. And then x to the 1 times what equals x to the 1? Well, it's just 1, or 1 minus 1 is 0, so no x is there. Okay, so now let's rewrite this without the 1's. It's a little easier to see. Okay, so now, if you notice, I have x squared again. I did GCF first, but now GCF first, and now I have x squared, or I have a quadratic. I have a quadratic here, so now I can factor, or x box, x squared minus 3x minus 10. Okay, so let's do our x and our box. And just remember, once we find our factors, that the 3x stays there. Okay, so now, again, we're focusing on just what's inside the parentheses. Okay, so we do 1, first term, times the last term. 1 times negative 10. It's just negative 10. Then the middle number, which is negative 3. And then two numbers that multiply to 10, but also add to negative 3. Well, the only numbers that multiply to 10 other than 1 are 5 and 2. And obviously one of them has to be negative because this is negative and this is negative. So I think it's 5 has to be negative because negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. And then x squared, and that's the first term here. And then the last term is negative 10. Okay, now we put the negative 5x here, and then 2x here. And then remember, to get x squared, it's x times x, so x here, and then x times what equals negative 5x, negative 5. Then x times what equals 2x, it's 2. Okay, so now write our first terms, x minus 5 and x plus 2. Okay, and there's our answer. Okay, just like the last one. Okay, now this next one. Now, what you guys will notice is that we have a plus here. So usually, when we have two terms, we typically have a minus, like this one, like number 10. But this one has, let's see if I can get down there, sorry. Kind of slow. This one only just has plus. Okay, so we can't do the quick way here. Okay, so now we need to have three terms. So we need 0. Let's do our x. Start with that. 9 on the top, 0 on the bottom. Two numbers that will multiply to 9. Well, the only ones that multiply to 9 are 3 and 3. If I make one negative, those will add to 0, but they will not multiply to negative, not to positive 9. Okay, and it doesn't matter if I do this 3 negative because they're both 3. So if I do that 3 negative, it's still the same, equals 0, but does not equal negative, positive 9. If I make them both negative, well, they're equal positive 9, but then they won't equal 0. So this is a case where you can't factor anymore. We're done. Okay, x squared plus 9 is your answer. You can't factor it any more than that. Okay, if it's not minus, it doesn't work. All right, so x squared plus 9, that's your answer. Okay, now let's move to the next page. Okay, so this next page, we're still doing the same factoring, but now we're just looking at some multiple choice questions. Okay, so now we have x squared minus x minus 6. Okay, so we can still do our x box. Negative 6 here is 1 times negative 6. And then there's a 1 here, so negative 1. Okay, so let's see, 3 and 2. And then this 3 would have to be negative. Do our x box. Okay, x squared goes here. Negative 6 here. Negative 3x here. And 2x here. And then I know that x times x will be x. Then x times what equals negative 3x? Well, that would be negative 3. Then x times what equals 2. Okay, so then that means that our factors will be x minus 3 and x plus 2. Now here's the thing. The question says, which of these over here is a factor of this equation or this quadratic? Well, just remember that this is a factor of this, and this is a factor of the quadratic. They're both factors. Okay, this is just one factor, and this is the other. So the question is, which one of these is a factor? Well, it would be B, because x minus 3 is one of the factors. Okay, so now number 20. Well, I recognize that I have two terms and a minus in the middle. So I can do the quick way here. Square root here, square root here. And again, you can do the Xbox method too, but I'm going to do the fast way for these last ones because we've already reviewed how to do the other ones. Okay, so square root of the first one will be 5x. Square root of the second one, you can do this in a calculator, is 8. So now first term, here, here. Second term, here, here. And then remember, when it's the two terms with a minus, then we're going to have a plus minus here. So that means that the answer would be this one here. And some of you ask, well, wait, but this one has a minus and this one has a plus. It doesn't matter. You can rewrite this the other way as well. Okay, you can rewrite it both ways. You can write this as 5x plus 8 or minus 8 and do that the other way. That's called the multiplicative property, that you can change the multiplication and go in the other way as well. Okay, so now number 21. Okay, again, for this one it says, which of the following shows this factored completely? All right, so I'm going to do the fast way again here. Okay, so now, again, if I do the square root here and square root here, well, the square root of that is 5t. And the square root of 16 is 4. And if I multiply that times 2, remember this is the quick way, if we have 3 terms, if that equals the middle term, I can do the fast way. So then 5 times 4 is 20, and 5t, so that's 20t, times 2 is 40t. So yes, I can do the quick way with this one. So now, you take the square root of the first, and that becomes the first term here, and the first term here, and then the square root of the last, that's the second term here and here. And then remember, when you have where it's 3 terms, and with this method, this sign tells us what these signs will be. Okay, so now it's going to be plus and plus. And some of you are like, well, it still doesn't match any of these. Well, remember when we had this, 5t, or let's say something like this, I don't know, 2x plus 1, and it was squared. Well, if that's squared means we have 2 of them, right? 2x plus 1 and 2x plus 1. So then that means I can rewrite this as 5t plus 4 squared. And then that way we know it's a. Okay, again, going back up here to this one. This can also be written as 5x minus 8 squared. Elijah. Shh, please. Okay. Sorry, guys. That's my son playing with his Hulk toys in the classroom. It's okay, though. All right, so then, again, your answer would be that one there. Okay, so now 22. Which is the factor form of this? Okay, so what you want to do is make life easy and see if you can get a GCF. Okay, because we've got to have a variable here, here, and here, but we also have some really big numbers. Okay, now you could also
do this method, the one we just did on the last problem. But these numbers are so big. Okay. So let's do the GCF here. Again, so we have 4, 48, and 144. Well, if you notice, the common number there is 4, so let's just try 4, because that's the biggest number we can divide into each of these anyways, or at least into this number. So the number would have to be bigger. It would have to be 4 or less. Okay, so now let's go across and look at the other ones. Okay, so now A, do all of them have A? No. So there's no A, and that's the same. How about B? Do they all have B? No. Okay, so our GCF is only 4. Okay, so now 4 times A squared equals 4A squared, then minus, then 4 times 12 AB equals 48AB, then plus. Then here, this will be a little bit harder to do if you didn't know, couldn't figure it out, but do it on a calculator. 144 divided by 4, well, it'd be 36B squared. So now you want to take sorry, not the GCF, but now you can factor this, because we have an A squared here. And some of you are like, well, wait, but there's a B squared here. But because we have squared here, and we have a perfect square here, we can. It's when all of them have the same letter that we can't. But not all of them have the same letter. Okay? And I think the problem on the test will be extra credit for this one anyways. Okay? But nonetheless, let's go ahead and do it. Okay, so our answer should look something like this. Okay, so let's do our x. And again, remember, we're looking at this only inside the parentheses. We're only looking at this expression in here, not the... Okay, so now the top is going to be the first number times the last one. Now, the difference here is that this one is 36b squared. Okay, so we're actually going to put 36b squared here. Okay, and then the first number will be 1, so that times 1. Okay, and then the last number will be 12b. Okay, because it's almost like we're treating this b like it's another number and not an actual variable or letter. Okay, so now if we do -6 and -6, well, I know -6 times -6 is positive 36, and -6 plus -36 is -12. But it's not 12b or b squared, so that means both of these will have to be b, because b times b is b squared, and then b plus b, or then 6b, -6b plus -6b is -12b. So now we're going to make our box, and here we'll have a squared. Here we'll have our, sorry, that's actually positive, 36b squared. And then here we're going to have -6 and -6. Now here's where it's a little different. Usually we put just one letter here, but we usually always just put whatever the letter is here. It's X or P or whatever, but here it's AB. So actually we're going to put 6AB. Okay? So now I know that A times A is A squared. Now what times A equals -6AB? Well, that would be -6 times B, because we have A here and we already have A here, so we just need to multiply -6 and B. And again, it would be the same here. It's the exact same over here, because A times -6B equals -6AB. And double check your answer. -6 times -6 is 36. And then B times B is B squared. Okay, so now here's our factors, A minus 6B and A minus 6B. And as we can see, that would be number C, letter C. Okay? Okay, that's it. Any more questions? Remember, I posted IXL in Google Classroom. You have this video to watch, your review, You can also come by at lunch. The review time has passed after school. That's it.